Hello, my friends. 'Tis the season of gift guides, and this video is not really a gift guide, but I did want to go through a few ideas about gifts for writers, just in case you have any writer friends and you aren't sure what to give them. And if you are a writer, you can send this video to someone else to steer them the right way, to give them a hint. So in the video, we're going to go through three main categories, and these are going to be number one, notebooks. It sounds simple, but I have a few thoughts about how you can make a notebook like a good gift and not just, hey, you're a writer, so here's a notebook. Number two is going to be writing craft books. Initially, I was planning to have this whole section where I go through different books here, and we're not really going to do that. I made a separate video for that because I thought it was just more useful that way. But we're going to talk about writing craft books as presents, as gifts. And third category would be coaching, programs, workshops, courses, writing groups, that kind of thing. These are the three categories that I feel any writer would be happy to receive a gift from. And also they're the kinds of gifts that are never, let's say, that you can never have too many of. There's never too many writing craft books, as long as it's not the same one, although even that, maybe, perhaps. And there's never too many notebooks for most writers, I feel. And also the same goes for coaching or receiving feedback or courses. That's never something that, well, most writers would just like to stop and they're like, yes, now I know absolutely everything and I will just do everything completely by myself from now on. So yeah, that's why those are the three categories that we're going to talk about. In general, of course, there are also other ideas. Especially, I've been debating about including the I'm a Writer merch products. The kind of things I'm talking about, like mugs that say, I'm a writer, of course my internet history is weird, or stuff like that, I'm a writer, be careful what you say to me, or you'll end up in my book, or stuff like that. And this can be really fun, I feel. Also, depending on the person, depending on the writer, how they feel about this kind of stuff. But this is something that I feel there can be too much of. If someone has a sticker and a mug, that's pretty much it. You don't need 10 mugs of this kind, and you don't need, 100 stickers on your computer of this kind. Maybe there are writers out there who would love that. And if you know that your friend is like that, then great. Go off and buy them something like that. But I feel in general, notebooks, writing craft books, coaching, courses, workshops are just much more useful and supportive gifts. So now let's get into them. So number one, notebooks. This one might seem obvious, and I even know people who are like, oh, I don't want to buy her notebooks or buy him notebooks, whatever, because it's too cliche. But I just want to say, in my experience, my own personal and also the writers that I know, like everyone appreciates a good notebook. I have never been in a situation where a writer would be like, ugh, a notebook? What are you talking about? Even if it's a writer who mainly uses computer software for writing. So a notebook is just always a nice idea. However, it's true that it can feel a little bit, on the nose, a little bit cliche. And that's why I just wanted to mention a few things that a lot of people might not think about when getting a notebook as a gift. And these few things I think can really make a difference between, here's a nice notebook, here you go, and this notebook is for you. I knew that you would actually love this specific notebook. So one aspect, of course, is just the design of it. You can find, let's say, special types of notebooks, and if you can find something that fits the writer personality and what they like, then that's a winner. One of my favorite gifts ever that I have received ever was actually a notebook that, wait, I still have it somewhere. Okay, I'm not gonna go searching for it, but it was a notebook that actually was bound like a book, soft cover, but with like fake leather, covers. And actually the lines in the notebook were a novel. And in my case, so from what I understood, there were several options. And in my case, I got The Picture of Dorian Gray, which is a novel that I am a fan of and I was a fan of at the time. So I had this notebook that, at first glance, you look at it and it just looks like, okay, there are these lines in it, whatever, fine. But if you look closer, this was very tiny font that was the picture of Dorian Gray. So that was pretty interesting and pretty cool. And that's what I'm talking about when it comes to finding some sort of quirky little special type of notebook. Most of the time, however, I feel like this is not something that you can just find anywhere. And this is maybe a bit more of a coincidence that you encounter something like this or not. So what you can pay attention to is what kinds of notebooks your writer friend already uses. And this is something that to many people might seem insignificant and like it doesn't matter. But I'm telling you, to most writers, even if they're not aware of it, it matters. Because a notebook and a pen, this actually refers to pens as well, it's literally the tools of the craft. These are the tools with which we, do what we do. And what kind of a paper it is, whether it's lined or squared or dotted or blank, that matters. Some people prefer to write on, very, very white paper. Some people prefer paper that's a bit more, recycled, or at least it has the look, that's more matte, because then the shine is not there. And some people prefer paper that's a bit more glossy, because maybe the writing flows better. Another thing to pay attention to is what kind of a notebook it is, so how it functions. For example, there are some writers who really love these, Japanese stationery style notebooks that are very flat and are able to open like this, and be very flat on the surface of the desk. Personally, I really don't like those. Also, usually they have very thin paper and I'm like, no way. Anything that you write, you can clearly see it on the other side. It's just annoying. And I also don't like using very thin pens. I like writing with a fountain pen that usually requires also thicker paper. So that would be the kind of a thing to look for. Also, whether the notebook opens like this or like this. This thing is my favorite type of a notebook, the ones that have a spiral here and they open like this. But I don't know if that's the case everywhere in the world. Here in Slovenia, they are getting harder and harder to get. So I don't know what's going on with that. Maybe no one likes those, but they are my favorite. So yeah, and of course, when we're talking about spiral and how the notebooks are bound, that's also something maybe that you can check if the writer prefers something that's bound like a book or with a spiral, so that they can, turn it and only have one page there where they're writing, or if they prefer something that opens more like a journal or, like a little booklet. Another thing to pay attention to, of course, are the covers, hard or soft covers, and the size. Are we talking about pocket notebooks, or are we talking about A4, A5, B4, B5, whatever it is? What are these writers' preferences for their notebooks? These are all things that, now I got a little bit excited about this. I find it very interesting to pay attention to these kinds of things. And I think most people don't notice these kinds of things, but I am willing to bet you that most writers do have preferences about all of these aspects of notebooks, even though maybe they're not even aware of it, maybe they're not conscious, or maybe they're very aware of it and very intentionally get only the notebooks that they prefer, like me. I have my own preferences, and I have found that, it's true. On one hand, you can write in anything with anything. Technically, you don't need a certain type of a notebook or a certain type of a pen to write. And that's good to know. It's good to be aware of that. On the other hand, it also doesn't hurt and can be even helpful if the tools that you're using are the kind that make the whole experience more enjoyable, easier to get into the flow of it. So yeah, it's not that insignificant. These are the kinds of details that can make a difference between a random notebook for a random writer and a notebook that you picked specifically for this writer because you know that this is what they like. The next category is writing craft books. This is another classic that you cannot go wrong with, I feel, unless, of course, the writer already has this book. This is the only thing to really check first. And yeah, I mean, maybe if the writer really passionately hates the author of this book or something like that, then, also check on that. But other than that, this is really not a category where you can go wrong, in my opinion. As I mentioned, I made a whole separate video going through the books. I will just quickly show them here. So some great suggestions, if your friend doesn't already have these, would be The Writer's Journey by Christopher Vogler, Story by Robert McKee. Great for story structure, character development, that kind of thing. If you want to support your friend more in terms of if you think they tend to get frustrated and blocked and they're not really motivated to write, then The Artist's Way or The War of Art, depending on what kind of, if they need some tough love, this is the book to go with. If they need some gentle love, then this would be the book to go with. Next up, we have two books that are both kind of autobiographical reflections on the writing life, so full of experiences and writing advice. Stephen King's On Writing and Anne Lamott's Bird by Bird. Again, kind of depends on what kind of a person your writer friend is. If they're a fan of Stephen King, maybe more of a hustly, very super productive type of person, this would be it. If they want more gentle, softer support, Bird by Bird would be it. And then last but definitely not least, Steering the Craft by Ursula K. Le Guin. Great little, it's a pretty tiny book, but great overview of some aspects of writing. And, okay, this is actually last but not least, Dreyer's English, so an utterly correct guide to clarity and style. This would be more about grammar and style. And that was a very quick overview of writing craft books. All of these also have these are not all the craft books in the world. So if you know that your friend is a fan of Hero's Journey, for example, and The Writer's Journey, if they already have that, you can also dive deeper you can look into Joseph Campbell's books or other books that were written on the Hero's Journey or archetypes. Jung might be an interesting choice, really just depending on what your friend likes about this particular book, so that you can get additional books that will supplement that and just accompany that first book. As the last category, we have coachings, programs, workshops, services for writers. So if we first talk about one-on-one coaching, I think this is a great idea as a gift for a writer, because, getting feedback or support, no matter where your writer friend is on their journey in their project, whether they're just starting out or if they're deep in the depths of some project, or if they have already finished the first draft and now they're dreading going through the editing process, it can be super valuable to have a one-on-one session with someone who is not just their friend, but can steer them in the right direction, let's say, or a useful direction when it comes to their mindset, when it comes to their writing project, the structure, the characters, whatever it is, so that you have a very concrete personalized support and professional feedback on whatever it is that they're working on. And I know that so many writers can also be a bit averse to buying that for themselves or making an investment for themselves, because they might feel like, well, it's, I kind of know what I want to do, or they feel like, oh, my project is not good enough yet to get feedback on, which is, kind of ridiculous, especially when it comes to coaching. I'm not talking about reaching out to an editor or something. I'm not talking about pitching the thing to a professional, but that's literally what coaches are there for, to meet you wherever you are and help you find out what you do next and help you get through whatever stage you are going through. And I feel like so many writers are introverted and wouldn't really want to reach out to someone, and they might even feel like it's not their own writing is not worth investing into, or they might just keep postponing that. I know from my own experiences, I know from experiences from people I know, that you just say, okay, not right now, I will maybe do it next month or next month or next month, and then it just turns into never, because it can feel scary talking to someone about your own writing, and writers may feel like, oh, I should have this already figured out. But like I said, that's literally what coaches are there for. And that's why I feel this can be, if there's an option to get a coaching session as a gift for someone, that can be a great gift, because there is nothing to lose there. It will inevitably be very valuable, I feel, for the writer. And when it comes to choosing a coach, of course, you can go with the best, which is me. I do offer one-on-one coaching, and I will link my offer below. But in general, you can also do some research about who your writer friend is already following, whom do they like, whose perspective do they like. And there are also coaches that specialize in certain types of genres or formats. So you can find coaches that specialize in romance writing or period romance even more, or horror, or I don't know, fantasy, sci-fi, that kind of stuff. Don't just Google, writing coach and get the first person that comes up, whatever, but look into what kinds of stories is this coach interested in and familiar with, and also what is there, this is actually even more important than just the genre or format. What is their perspective on writing? How do they approach writing? What is their tone? What is their vibe? And then choose the one that will fit that. For example, personally, I love working with complex and complicated plots. I love working with thrillers, with crime stories, anything that has a plot twist, anything where you want to maybe play around with the structure, maybe go with a non-linear narration, anything of the sort. Also comedy, anything that is a little bit more lighthearted, that's my jam. But more important than that is if we get along with the writer. If I know that the writer can appreciate my perspective, and if I also can understand the writer's perspective and their voice and tone, if there's mutual respect, if there's a vibe, if there's a connection, that is so much more important than just, do we fit on paper or not? So that's one thing to pay attention to when you're choosing a coach, actually for yourself or for your writer friend. And then the other aspect of this last category would be programs, workshops, courses, where, to be honest, the same thing applies. I think often writers can be a little bit reluctant to invest in that, either because they don't believe they're going to get anything from it, or they don't believe that their writing is good enough, or that their ability to develop something really good is good enough to go into a program or to do a workshop, to do a course, to join a writer's group, whatever. But just like with coaching, these can be a great choice. Although they might be a little less personalized, they are still usually, courses and workshops are more specialized and more focused on one particular aspect of writing. And that's what enables you to find something that really fits your writer friend. So if you know that they're interested in, if you know that they're struggling with the story structure, find a program that will help them with that. If you know that they love writing horror short stories, I'm pretty sure you can find workshops on writing horror short stories. And with workshops and programs, the main thing is not even really learning something, although it can be an aspect of that. And I know from my own experiences, whenever I was in a program, did a program or a course or a workshop, even on something that I'm already really familiar with, it has always been worth it. It has always given me some new perspective, some new reminder of something new. It brought a new depth to that topic or theme of it. And of course, if you know that if you have a friend who wants to write a story with a plot twist, I also have a workshop where we talk specifically about crafting compelling plot twists. So that would be a great option if that's something that your friend is interested in. At the moment of filming this, that's the only workshop that I offer. I am currently working on other offerings, so maybe if you see this in the future, you can check out some other workshops or programs by me. But right now, Plot Twist Magic is the only one. And like I said, it's not like you're not going to buy that for a friend who is writing a rom-com. Although I think it would even be useful for that, to be honest. But if you know that your friend is writing some sort of thriller where they have this idea for a great plot twist and they're kind of worried about, oh, is it gonna come off cheesy or not? Is it gonna be too predictable or not, or whatever, blah, 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 then voila, that's a great option. And whatever it is that your friend is working on, I'm sure there are so many workshops, there are so many programs out there that I'm sure you can find something that will help them, that will support them in whatever it is that they're kind of dealing with. And if not, like we said, coaching is always a great option as well. So yeah, those would be my ideas, my suggestions for gifts for writers. I really do feel like you cannot go wrong with these ones. A notebook and a pen, a writing craft book, or coaching workshop program. These are just welcome. So if you have, I'm just looking at my dog here. So if you have any friends and you would like to support them on their writing journey, these are some great options. Or if you are a writer and you want to support yourself on your writing journey, these are also some great options. And if you're a writer, please let me know in the comments if you've ever received a writer themed gift that made you really happy, and what was it? Thank you so much for being here. Like the video, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Please also check out my Writing Studio newsletter. It's a great way to keep in touch on a weekly basis. I will, of course, put a link in the description below. And I wish you a great and magical December, and I'll see you next month.